Students, day before yesterday's we have started with your third unit by defining with this class and subclass, then moving towards the next one, that is abstract methods. Then yesterday we have been learned with some another concepts like final we have been learned with the method overloading, method overriding, and how actually the method overriding is going to be useful within a Java programming language was seen, and the differences between method overloading and method overriding. Once again, I am telling to you that there will be a 5 marks of question, that is method overloading, difference between overriding and overloading. Today, once again, we are going to go to 4. We will be going with the very important concept called as final keyword. A final is a keyword which is used to set a data information restricted or cannot be used by the user, any other users. If a particular program is written by a programmer, he will be knowing what is the use of it. If any another person comes and if he wants to change the information at that position, it is going to restrict the things. So for that sake, we are going to use with the final keyword. He is going to say here the final keyword is in Java is used to restrict the users. Restriction means it should be used within the part, within the construct, within the flower braces. It could not be accessed any outside of the flower braces, or it should not be used by another classes, or it should not be used by the objects of the another classes, or it could not be extended to the other classes. Like that, with this, all the restrictions can be made by defining with your final keyword. The Java final keyword can be used in many contexts, like final keyword can be used as a variable, final keyword can be used as a method, as well as final keyword can be used as class also. So restricting means, just I can give a simple example. When you have created a two classes called as class A and class B, class B wants to take or inherits the properties of attributes and the methods of class A. At that time, class A can restrict to access the variables, methods, as well as class itself also, if anything is defined by final. If you are not going to define by the final, it can be accessed in time. There is no any problem at all. But when it is defined by the final, then ultimately you can't access the properties like attributes, methods, as well as a class from one to the other. For that sake, we are going to use with the final keyword. It is going to restrict the user to access those all the information outside of the class. So there are three different types of final keyword can be used, that is final variable can be made, final method, and as well as final class. Final keyword can be applied with the variables. A final variable that have no value, it is called blank final variable or uninitialized final variable. It can be initialized in a constructor only. The blank final variable can be a static also, which will be initialized in the static block only. We have detailed statements in the next coming paragraphs. So what he is going to say here, if you are defining any variable with a final, if you are not going to initialize a 0, if you are not going to initialize any value to that one, then ultimately it becomes the 0 or initialized to no value. No value means nothing is given. Ultimately it is going to take with the either, if it defined with integer, it will be taking 0. If you are defined with or declared with a variable called as in string, then it will be accepting with null value. So we can have a simple example over here how actually the final keyword or final variable can be used within the Java programming language. Java final variable, if you make any variable as a final, you cannot change the value of its. It means it is nothing but called as we can't change at all. If the variable is defined with final, it is like a constant value itself. Constant means if any variable value is any variable defined with a value, then ultimately we can't change the value of that particular variable at the time of execution time. So we can say them as what? Unchangeable, we can say. Okay. Then how are you going to define this one? Now you're going to have a simple example here. It is defined over here with class bike 9 public void int speed limit is equal to 90. Means final variable you are defined with final int speed limit is equal to 90. Here you have been defined with 90. Then void run speed limit is equals to 400. So finally you have given the value as 90. So we can't access or create any information for that particular final variable. That is what he has been done in a method called as run. So just I will point here void, just you see final int speed limit is equal to 90 means it should be 90 on time. If you are going to give anything like file void run speed limit is equal to 400 means it is not going to accept the information. That time public static void main bike 9 object is equal to new bike. Bike 9 is a class name and you have created an object for that one, and you are going to run a statement called as object dot run. Object dot run means what? You access object bike 9 will be there, run is there, so you are going to have a error here. Error means final variable already initialized. If it is initialized to 0, there is no any problem, you can initialize the value. But if it is already initialized, reinitialization of the informations could not be done. So for that sake you are going to get a error called as compile time error. Compile time error means there is a problem in defining the informations. Okay, final variable is constant value means once when you have been defined with anything, that value will be the constant until user is going to change by itself. Otherwise the information will be accessed or used or executed as usual. Then you're going to have with the next statement which is used for Java final method. Final method stands for what? A method which is defined with final, you cannot override it. Override means defining the same name in a superclass as well as subclass. At that time subclass is going to execute the function with the same name, but it could not be executed from your main class. At that position, to stop, to cannot could not override that one, you can use with the final method. What is going to say here? If you make any method as a final, you can't override it. Overriding means we can't leave that one and executes with the next statement. Then also you are going to get an compile time error itself. So how it is going to be there, we shall check with the simple statements or the example. Class bike, within that one you are defined with final void run system dot println then a bracket running. So you are defined in a class called as run. Okay, the same you are extending that bike. Extending means you are accessing the properties of a bike within the Honda. So within that one also you are written with void run system.out.println running safely with 100 kmph. In Honda you are writing with 100 kilometers per hour, but in your bike you are running, you are written with running. So the name, signature, the return type are same if a function or a method is defined with final, could not be reassigned or reutilized or reused within the next class. If you are going to write like that way, what it is going to happen at that position? Honda is going to create with the Honda is equal to new Honda dot run, which function should be executed. As already I have said that if any function defined with final, if the same name will be there, then ultimately you're going to have with what? Compile time error, because it is not going to override the function informations. It cannot be override. You can't override. If a function name of final is different and the Honda's function is different, at that time you're going to get an execution. Correct execution will be there. Both the names are same, the differences, the return type are also same. So for that sake you are going to have an error or a problem within the execution of this particular program. So this is all about your final variable as well as final method. Just I will repeat once again. Final variable means constant value. Final variable means you can't override. Keep like this within your mind. Ultimately you can write anything within the papers. There is no any problem also. variable, final variable means it is a constant value, it could not be changed at the time of execution of a time. And final method means you can't override the function. Whichever, if the function is defined or a method is defined with the final, that could not be overridden. Or you can use different function name, there is no any problem. But if a function name is defined with final and the same name is used within the other class, then you are going to have with a problem. That is called as what? Final keyword. Okay, then you can go for the last part of this particular Java final class. Final class means if you make any class as a final, you cannot extend it. This is a part. This is a part. What it is going to say here, if in the inheritance concept there is a way where you can extend the classes from superclass to subclass. Class A can be extended to class B, but sometime it is going to be happen that I don't wanted to extend the class. At that time you can define with final. If you are going to define with final, then ultimately you can't extend that particular class. We can call that one as what? A final class. You can just see here. Final class bike, class Honda 1 extends bike. So here you are accessing the properties of bike here. Final class bike is not having anything. Just for example, he is going to say here. What he is going to say? You are accessing that particular bike and you are calling run. When you are going to call a run, within the run you are going to have with the run statement, but before to that one it is going to go for bike is defined with final. If it is final means the class could not be extended, means Honda 1 is not going to have any value, or which is not going to be, class will not going to be created. At that time also you are going to get an compile time error. Why I am going with the compile time error means you can understand what is the difference of using or defining the final keyword within the Java programming language. In a Java, the final keyword is used to denote constants. It can be used with variable methods and classes. Once any entity, variable, method or class is declared final, it can be assigned only once it is. So he is going to wrap up within a summary here. How actually the final variable is going to do, how the method is going to be done, and how you are going to go for class. The final variable cannot be reinitialized. Reinitialized means you can't change the value of variable. Whatever the finally have been defined with the variable, that could not be changed with another value. Already have done. In the previous example you have seen, speed limit was 90 and you are reinitializing the value as 400. At that time you want to get an error called as 400 as a compile time error, because we can't reinitialize when the variable has been defined with the final variable. Okay. Then the final method cannot be overridden. Why? If the function name is same within the both the classes, at that time if a main class is defined with the final, ultimately that particular function could not be overridden or cannot be having any sense to execute with the function which is present within the subclass also. Okay. The final class, as usual, you have seen, that is the final class cannot be extended. If any class is defined with the final, we can't extend that one. So you please keep in the mind there is a two differences. Abstract means you can't create the objects of the classes. Final means you can't extend or you can't inherit the properties from one to the other classes. Please be in the mind, because you will be confused within the when you are going to write in an examination. Okay. Abstract means we can't create the objects for the classes. Final means we can't inherit the properties if any class is defined with the final class. Okay. So I'll be ending here itself today's class. Rest other things we'll discuss tomorrow. Thank you very much.